Hey, Nish here, and today I'm going to be making the case that this loop pedal is potentially the only one you need. This is the Boss RC500, which was released in late 2020 and is the successor to Boss's other dual-track loopers such as the RC30. This is a dual-track multi-instrument guitar looper pedal that I've been having a lot of fun playing around with. Today I'm going to be talking you through its features and its pros and cons. Taking a look first at the I/O. From the left we've got an XLR mic input which has phantom power in case you're using a condenser mic, either stereo or two instrument inputs, a stereo or dual output, MIDI out and in, an option for an additional foot switch, micro USB to hook up to a PC, and DC power in. At the front we have 3 foot switches, that's one extra than the Boss RC30. We have a bunch of buttons on here that are predominantly used to navigate between the various menus. For example, the track 1 and track 2 buttons let you access their respective menus, and the same thing for the rhythm button. We've got some volume sliders for both tracks and also a dial for the mic input. There's a bunch of LEDs dotted around which let you at a glance see what's going on. Power-wise, you will need to buy a standard 9-volt adapter, but you can also power it with 4 AA batteries, which will give you about 3.5 hours or 2 hours with the phantom power. One of the big new features on the RC500 is the screen, which wasn't on their previous models. This is quite useful because, like I showed with the RC1, it's useful to have a little indicator of what's going on in the loop pedal and where you are. As I mentioned, this is a 2-track looper. You can have those 2 tracks playing simultaneously or one at a time. There's also a full rhythm feature which has 16 kits and 57 different rhythms. One of the biggest strengths and features of this looper pedal is its customizability. Firstly, those 3 foot switches can actually be customized to have one of around 40 different functions, not just the ones that are assigned by default. You also have a host of settings for each of the tracks and the rhythm. When does the rhythm start? When do the tracks start and stop? Do they play only once? Which of the instruments and inputs are being played? Is the microphone being played? I could go on for a long time. There's 99 different patches on this pedal which can let you store your recordings for later use. More importantly though, you can also store in each patch those settings for each track and rhythm. This is really neat because if you're using a particular set of settings for a song, you can save those to the patch and easily change a host of settings with only one switch, switching between the patches. As far as some additional features go, you've got some loop FX options. The MIDI compatibility also lets you hook one of these up to Ableton and potentially hook up another RC500 and link them up in terms of the timing circuit. It's not something I've understood a lot about, but I've seen some cool reviews that talk about it. Now, of course, all these settings and options do seem a little bit daunting, but the good thing is there's some really good documentation that Boss provide. There's a parameter guide, and the manual has some good step-by-step instructions for changing common settings that you might want to tamper with. Before I move on to talking about how to use this thing, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe if you haven't already. It helps the video get out there and the channel to grow. When it comes to using the RC500, I see 2 main configurations that you might want to use it in. The first one is the default configuration, how it comes out the box, where the foot switches do what they're labeled to do. Here's a quick demo of how that works. Okay, so I've got the pedal in the default configuration where the switches do what they say. So I'm just going to quickly play something on track 1. We're currently selected on track 1. Okay, so now track 1 is playing, and you can see that track 1 went to green rather than being blue. Okay, so track 1 was playing. I've just stopped it for a second with the stop button. Now, when I record track 2, I can actually record that at a different length. It could be a multiple of the length of track 1, for example. There's a lot of settings that determine how the syncing of tracks goes. I won't go into detail here, but you can look that up in the manual. So let's get track 1 going and then record something on track 2. We'll use the track select to switch over to track 2. See, the syncing actually helped me get in time there. So now that I've got both tracks playing, I can show you how to switch between them. Stop. So if we want to get rid of track 1, I can switch over to track 1 with the track select and stop. I can switch back to track 2 and also stop that. So now nothing is playing and I'm currently on track 2. One cool thing is you can hold the track selected, select both tracks, and I can get everything going all over again. And then I can stop them both at the same time, or I can go back to selecting one of them,
So we're on track 2 again. Let's just get that going on its own and stop it before it has a chance to go on. Switch back to track 1 and play that as well.
This configuration isn't the most feature-rich, but it is very easy to use, and in particular, that dedicated track select button makes this a lot easier than previous dual-track loopers, where you would normally need to hold a button to switch between the tracks. This could lead to errors in the heat of the moment and really ruin an entire set if you're a performer, for example. The other philosophy, if I may call it that for using a looper pedal, is to set the first 2 foot switches to act like independent looper pedals. What I mean by this is you can basically set each of these 2 foot switches to work like a mini RC1, which is a single track looper pedal with a play, dub, and stop feature. This opens up the 3rd switch to be used for a whole host of other functions without losing any of the functionality compared to the default setup I just described. So that 3rd switch, you could use that to start and stop the rhythm, to start and stop the loop FX, to change the volume, any of those 40 functions that I mentioned.
The 3rd pedal switch I've put on the rhythm on and off, so I can start and stop the rhythm track with that. As you can see, we've got a rhythm track going. Now what I'm going to do is record something onto the 1st pedal by pressing its respective button. So now we've got something playing on track 1, and if I want to stop that, I can press track 1's pedal button twice, just like you would with an RC1. We can start that up again. Now if I want to record on track 2, all I need to do is press track 2's button, which I'll do in a sec. So now you can see I've got track 2 playing and track 1 playing. If I want to stop track 2, again, I double press it. If I want to stop the rhythm, I can do that as well. Now I've just got that. So you can play around a lot with this to have little breaks in the track. Maybe this is a lower song, and then you could come back in with the rhythm. I will mention there is a lot of settings that you can use where the rhythm comes in with the tracks or stops when the tracks stop, and you really can play around a lot with that.
These 2 configurations are definitely not the limit of what this pedal is capable of. As I mentioned, you can add yet another foot switch, and that will give you potentially 2 more switches to set to one of those 40 options. So yeah, it is a really, really customizable bit of kit. So hopefully now you've got an idea of what the pedal is capable of, and I can talk about some general pros and cons. Of course, the big pro is hopefully I've demonstrated that it's a very capable, customizable, feature-rich looper that does pretty much anything you want to do. It includes a full rhythm function and the dual tracks and all the settings, and I think it would take a long time to get bored or to feel limited by what this pedal is capable of doing. Of course, you will want to spend a little bit of time reviewing the documentation to get the most out of this pedal, just like the Boss GT1 I reviewed. It's a small price to pay though, because I think reading through the parameter guide in particular will pay dividends later. As far as other factors go, the build quality is really good. It's really solid in a metal construction. The foot switches are pretty well made and they feel very solid when you're pressing them. As far as the other buttons on the device go, they're nice and tactile, the plastic buttons. Now the menus, there's a lot of them, and it can be a little bit laborious trying to find what you want, but I think that's a question of practice rather than the design itself. Eventually I did find the dial and button thing to be quite intuitive to use and natural. As for cons, it's a struggle, and I swear Boss don't have a gun to my head for this section. One of the really little things is they're still using micro USB on something released in late 2020. I mean, you know, could use Type-C. But anyway, at least it isn't that USB Type-B that some pedals have. The other thing that might be more worth your consideration is the limited battery life, potentially, especially compared to older pedals like the Boss RC30. That could get about 7.5 hours on a charge, whereas this one can only do 3.5 hours or 2 hours if you're using the phantom power. That potentially could affect people who are going to be using this on a very portable basis, but I think you do get stuff for that lower battery life. There's obviously a lot more processing going on under the hood, you've got the screen, so it's somewhat understandable. So to conclude, as I've said probably too many times, this thing is a very highly capable and really fully featured looper, and I think it is the only looper the majority of people could need, unless you're a really, super loop enthusiast. And I think if you've currently got a single track looper pedal and you want to expand your capabilities in a exponential way, an order of magnitude way, then this is a really good way to do it. Of course, it is a little bit pricey. That's one thing I forgot to mention in the cons section. It comes at about £240, $250, euros, something along that ballpark, which is quite a lot. But if you consider that it's something you are going to be able to play with for a long time, then I think it works out to quite a good investment. But let me know what you think. In the comments, please do let me know what you think of this looper pedal, whether you think there's another looper pedal that would knock it off its perch as a king of looper pedals. Thanks again for watching. I hope it's been a useful review, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.